Guys, we are back. Play It Forward with Jenny Lee and Gareth Smith, two awesome filmmakers from LA. They made a great movie. They were Played It Forward by Terrence Houston, who made Mad Doggin'. And these guys are really, they know their stuff. They're top-notch filmmakers, and we're very lucky, fortunate to have them today. Guys, welcome to the show. Thanks for being on it.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks very much.
Guys, first question. Why did you make this film right there? And when I say that, I'm really talking about the passion. It's hard making a short film, and it's a lot of work. And what motivated you to do it?
Do you want to jump in, Jenny?
Well, Gareth and I have been working together for a long time, since 2003, basically.
We met while working.
We met while we were working.
We met on a job.
We both had separate paths at the time to hopefully become directors. And we ended up, life happens, and we just found ourselves designing title sequences, kind of by accident. So we took some time off from pursuing our own paths as directors to become title designers. We didn't know we were going to become title designers, but that's what happened. And then
that's great. I mean, you got to make a living, know, and you guys are awesome title design. What's that, Gareth?
What's nice about title design is it is a big part of the movie. It's usually the first few minutes of the movie, and title design in a lot of ways is like making a short film for a feature film. I mean, it's not in the same way, obviously, where there's a specific story being told with the title sequence, but title design, repeatedly, our experience with that was to establish tone for movies. So we were really interested in kind of the idea of tone, of a specific tone for our filmmaking. So this particular short film, we had been doing title design, I think, since 2010. We started by doing Thank You for Smoking, and have been doing it for a number of years now.
Thank You for Smoking was 2005.
Oh, sorry, that was 2005, you're right.
2005, but he had another company, I was doing my own thing, and then we officially became a company in 2010 as Smith and Lee Design. But we're married, and we've been married since 2009.
Very cool.
And together since 2003.
Yes. Anyway, you don't need to keep track of the years. It's just a long time.
That's not easy, guys. I mean, I work with my wife too. I know, it can be a challenge having a creative relationship and a business relationship. You guys are awesome title designers, so there's no doubt about that. And you've done some big projects. But getting back to the, why? What was the passion? Why this film? You could have picked a number of different stories. A lot of different stories, a lot of different projects, and why this one? What was it that spoke to you?
Well, Gareth and I have different sensibilities creatively, but we've always managed to find a way to merge our interests and abilities. So it was very important to find a short film that we were going to co-direct as a couple together that spoke to both of us. And so we actually did a lot of research, just reading lots of short stories and toying with the idea of writing our own. But then ultimately we came across this writer named Kevin Wilson, and both of us really responded to his voice. He writes about lonely characters, but with a great sense of heart and humor. And there's also elements of things being surreal that could play to our visual sensibilities. So we decided to take a chance and adapt his short story.
And so that's great. And that's what I want to explore a little more. So what was the sympathy that you had between the lonely characters and this sort of surreal, fantastical world that you identified with and you wanted to commit to? What is it about that?
Yeah,
that is redemptive?
Well, we happened to read one short story of Kevin Wilson's, and then we read his whole book. And this particular short story really leapt out. We recommend this book, by the way. It's a lot of fun. It's called
Tunneling to the Center of the Earth.
Tunneling to the Center of the Earth, which is one of the short stories in it. And all of the short stories have a bit of a surreal, otherworldly quality to it, but not tremendously. It's not like he's world building. He's not creating entirely, it's not like fantasy or science fiction. It's the real world with one toe or one finger kind of stuck in the fantasy world. And I think that's something that personally really appealed to me. I tend to like films that do that have a little bit of a slight strangeness.
So Gareth, but what is it, you know, to get to the depth of that question, what does it say about human behavior? Because there's something there about human behavior that resonated with you, right? This world. And what is it that resonated with you? I mean, do you feel that's the world we live in, most characters live in? What, you know, that leads us to the next question is what did you want to say? You know, so what resonated with you, and what's the artistic kind of heart that pulled you into this world?
Mm-hmm. Well, when did we find it? It was 2014 is when we started, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
2014,
15.
Before the election, before any of this stuff, the political landscape is going on. So I wanted to say that because, you know, the current political situation wasn't in our mind when we started this, but when we started this, what we felt the story really tapped into in a beautiful way, and kind of, I feel like is a problem in our American society, is kind of an overwhelming sense of fear about everything. There's generally speaking, people just seem to be more afraid these days than they used to. And in this case, in the short stories case, he uses parenting, specifically helicopter parenting, the idea of parents really trying to control every aspect of their child's lives to represent fear. And so this main character in the short film basically lives off of fear. He goes around and predicts all these worst case scenarios for individuals, for companies, and his job is to make everyone understand the worst possible thing that can happen to them.
Right. And that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking. Why do you think, what's up with that? Why do you think today, I mean, because you're exploring fear and that negative thinking and that constraint of negative thinking, and then there's that cathartic moment at the end. And why do you think that we as Americans are living in a time of more fear than before? And
I can't say exactly, because I think there's a myriad reasons why we are generally more fearful as a people these days. Of course, the news has a lot to do with it, of featuring primarily just the bad news.
Negative headlines.
Negative headlines.
Always catching people louder.
And I think fear is it's like plaque in a way, like, you know, dental plaque. It kind of grows over time. So it's not something where I feel like we just suddenly switched and we're afraid. I mean, people are always afraid, of course, but there's just something about now where there's the instant access of the fear. Like, you can kind of share your fear virally these days. And
yeah, you think social media promotes fear?
Oh, well, absolutely, as we're seeing in the headlines these days. I mean, certainly this isn't the idea of fake news and distribution of artificial fear isn't something that we were really aware of when we're making this short, but it's very interesting to have kind of come from where we did in 2014 and seeing how the themes of this short actually are even more sort of relevant right now as people are just more, I mean, we're fearful of everything. And so in this, we think that parenting is just such a great way to represent this on a small scale. Like one of my favorite things with great genre or sci-fi or horror filmmaking is the idea that you can kind of represent complex themes or issues in society with kind of a small situation. And that's definitely something we're trying to do in this short film, is take it's a very small story. It's just a guy telling this mom what could go wrong in her house. But to us, that was a fun way to make people kind of laugh about their fears. And thankfully that is a response we've gotten from most audience members when they watch this, and I've actually been surprised at this, is how many people identify with Ryan, the character who goes around and predicts worst case scenarios. So we've kind of discovered that most people sort of have some of this quality to them. They have this kind of worst case thinking. Situation pops up and people kind of immediately think of the worst possible outcomes. So we're hoping that as filmmakers, we like it when a short film can kind of comment on something like that, and maybe not overtly say it, but kind of make you think about it a little bit, hopefully. make you self-aware.
Totally. And one of the things, you know, that's in the film is that his relations are estranged because of his fear, right? He loses his girlfriend, significant other. And, you know, how do you think does that play into just day-to-day interactions with people? And one of the things, you know, we're trying to break through here is, and interestingly enough, you know, I'm really like into positive psychology and organizational dynamics. One of the things I do here as an agile coach leader at Digipops. And, you know, interestingly enough, there's studies done that the people that are the most healthiest are the ones that are most vulnerable. So and they step out in examples of that. They're the people that say, I love you first, or they initiate sex with their or initiate wanting to have sex with their partners, like asking, and, you know, those vulnerable things. So, you know, how do you think it affects, you know, that's what a culture we're trying to promote here as an antidote to that fear, saying, hey guys, you know, we're all human. Let's step out here and tell stories that are human stories, speak to one another as humans, risk failure or risk whatever it might be, and be more honest with ourselves. And how do you think, you know, fear affects a lack of day-to-day authenticity in our world?
Well, as you're saying, fear can affect a lack of authenticity in the world because it does hold people back, and they're always checking themselves and they're afraid to risk being vulnerable. And that's one of the reasons why, another reason why we really like the short story, it's because it's ultimately about this one man's fear of loneliness. He really wants to be in love and be with his girlfriend, but he can't escape the thoughts that are always running through his head naturally, thinking about worst case scenarios. And ultimately that leads to his personal downfall because she ends up leaving him. But the other thing that happens is that because he risks being vulnerable with his client, the mom, he's starting to see things in a more positive way. So that's the other reason why we love the short story. It has a very hopeful ending.
Yeah. So what's the antidote?
The antidote to
being afraid all the time.
Yeah.
Chill out. No, I always, it's advice I give myself a lot. I attempt, this is just a small thing, but whenever a really bad thought pops in my head, I try to change the subject internally. That's just a little internal ritual that I have when it comes to stuff. I mean, I don't want to get too much into it, but my entire life I've been dealing with like mild depression, high anxiety, and behind you, fear of flying is one of the specifics that, as you can see on the screen.
Jesus. So
but a
many
lot
people.
of fears. I kind of experienced personally a tremendous amount of fear. Jenny, on the other hand, she's a very cool, calm, and collected person. So we, in some ways, are opposites in that sense. And in a little bit of a way, this short film is also about our relationship. it's about kind of the contrast between the way we look at the world, and it's I do identify myself a lot with this main character, and I've been like one of the singular focuses of my life over the last year or two. There's Terrence right behind you. How hilarious.
Yeah. Oh, Terrence is in this too?
That's him right there. He's the best extra in the world.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, he's a great actor. But anyway, it's something that I've been personally trying to deal with, is how to manage anxiety, fear. I mean, when it comes to our work in particular, I would just be afraid all the time because we're pitching ideas. We have to put ourselves out there, and I'm just terrified all the time.
Scary. I mean, you're stepping in the ring and saying, hey, pick me. And, you know, these guys are looking at you like, why? Yeah,
exactly. There's a lot of bigger companies out there we could be working with. Why should we work with you two? So anyway, there's just sort of a lot of stuff in this short film that kind of felt relevant to us at that moment, both personally not politically yet, although the rumblings were starting to occur, but certainly on a society level, we were talking about this. I mean, it was just something that we were aware of just this fear on all sides.
Well, you know, that contextualizes what the first question of why this film, and really even what did you want to say and what did you want to explore? Because, you know, it's that you guys had a heartfelt connection and there was that redemptive point. You could identify with it, and it's a personal story. And I think, you know, that's one of the key ingredients to great filmmaking, which this is a great film. I mean, this is, you know, technically you guys knocked it out of the park. I mean, the visuals are ridiculous. I mean, it looks like a, you know, $1 million budget film. I mean, there's, you know, some high, you know, graphics, you know, animation, special effects. That's the word I was looking for. You know, whoa. I mean, the plane going over the house. I'm like, how'd you guys do that?
The plane is it was actually pretty simple. We just shot the plate in the backyard, so it was a simple whip pan. Let me just load it really quick because I can easily share things, I think. How do I share?
Oh, cool.
Here you go. I believe. There we are. Are you able to see that?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's go to the airplane. I think it's right there. There it is.
You drink this water?
So there you go. That's the airplane flight.
Oh, okay. So it's just a quick whip pan, huh?
You got a shot here. It's a little whip pan, very simple to do that. And then what we did is we did LAX, shot this airplane, and then in post, removing the sky was really easy. So this is actually, it's weird. This effect really catches people's attention, but it probably took 15 minutes to do. It's very easy.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, I mean, you know, so going back to the personal story and sharing, you know, what do you think about that? I mean, I think if a director doesn't have a personal story, they can't have a vision, right? And that's like one of the key things directing. Mm-hmm. What do you guys think about that?
Well, I think a director, even if they haven't experienced something themselves, they probably have the empathy and compassion to connect with their character and the world that they're trying to convey in the film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they just got to feel it.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm sorry.
Anti-hero or your character does or says things that you would never personally do, but you should be able to feel what they're going through and understand why they're doing it. It's similar to, I think, what actors go through when they play different kinds of characters from their real personalities.
Last formal question, but I do have another one for you. What changed? So, and what I'm really after here is that, you know, as artists creating art, you go through a cathartic experience yourself, not just in the storyline or whatever. You know, you go through an experience, and there's a before, middle, and after. And looking back on it, what changed for you psychologically, emotionally, producing this work, putting it out there, and now looking back on your experience, who you were then and who you are now?
Yeah. I guess I'll have to think about this for a second, but let me just start on the creative side, like some lessons we maybe learned from doing this. But one thing that I kind of took away from doing this particular short film is I really want to, I guess, loosen up a little bit next time. This seems like a very formal short to me, the way we shot it. I mean, it was a conscious decision when we were deciding how to shoot it and stuff, but it's very kind of staid, like lock off shots, very simple pans and tilts. It's kind of a traditional, you know, very simple, traditional style of filmmaking. So yeah, I just kind of, I think that kind of filmmaking I want to move on from and do something that's looser. And this story, I feel, needed that style. But in the future, I find it very appealing to kind of just be a little messier, a little sloppier with the filmmaker, cheaper, scrappier, certainly cheaper would be nice. But that's sort of a creative change that occurred.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely a great experience, and you've probably heard the similar types of stories of how things can get very challenging and tricky. But yes, having some time away from it, I definitely want to push myself in other ways as a director and tell other kinds of stories.
And Jenny actually has another short film that she finished like several months ago that's very character based. So there's no animation, no effects, no nothing. It's just people talking. So she's already down that path.
Jenny, send it our way. We'll pimp it out with this episode.
Yeah, I hope
if you like.
Yes. Okay. No, I'd be happy to.
Oh, yeah, I'd love to see it. Thank you. So it sounds like you guys want to take more risks, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I think so. I think when I watched this short film, it's funny. Just everyone I know who makes films or short films ends up either not liking their own work or not liking some aspect of their work. Generally speaking, I'm happy with how this turned out, but there's just so much that
great film.
Is messy. And I would like to
strong. I mean, it's a professional, strong piece. And clearly you guys made it for to showcase your professional abilities on the so that goes without saying. I mean, it's clear. But you know what, guys, interesting, going back to the initial part of the conversation, why this film, what was the passion, what did you want to say, why pick this piece? Fear. And it's interesting how we've come to risk. At the end of this dialogue, we've come to the risk. And to me, I'm hearing that risk is essential to move beyond fear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that funny? That's what we're afraid of. We're afraid of risking pain.
Rejection.
And yet, rejection, and yet risk is the critical ingredient to move beyond fear. How do you fathom that?
You have to go through the darkness to get to the lightness, and in the end have a sense of hope and to be able to keep going.
It is crazy how much you have to just keep pushing through the rejection. Like it does take a great deal of, I don't know what it is, but something to kind of to ignore the rejection and just keep plugging away at it.
Or even your own negative thoughts.
Or internal negative thoughts.
And in this business, look, what you guys have achieved is very admirable. You guys have really achieved a sophisticated place where you're running your own business. You're successful. I want to say, what is it? TypeScript. What is it?
Title designers.
Title designers. You're successful title designers, and you do a beautiful job. And it's a creative thing, and you've integrated that passion into your profession. I mean, it's very admirable. You guys, well done. So well done. You're doing it together as a couple. Beautiful. You run your own show. Guys, last question. This is it. Top couple of tips for young filmmakers starting out, or more mature ones. What have you learned? What are the things that?
I think for me, it's always, no matter what situation I'm in professionally or working on my own things, it's always treat others well, treat other people the way you would like to be treated, and that just goes across everything. Which
unfortunately I feel isn't a big part of the independent film world to a certain extent. It's like there's so much, when you're making these kinds of low budget projects, you're doing everything you can to get things done, and sometimes that means I've seen this on other short films, but kind of people taking advantage of situations and disobeying rules or whatever, which is great. But also at the same time, you just want to make sure you're being very nice and kind to everyone that's helping you and bring them up.
I love that. That's the fundamentals, fundamentals.
You gotta be nice. That really is something that we keep coming back to, I think.
Yeah.
The people we work with, we have, are ones that are nice. The people we hire to work for us, we like. So that's very key.
Yeah, and it's easy to lose focus of that, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unfortunately.
And
Yeah.
I guess the other piece of advice is don't be afraid to make a short film. And
yeah,
however it needs to happen, figure it out. You know.
I think that's great. I think those are two powerful lessons for success. You know, be nice and don't be afraid. That's beautiful, guys. Jenny Lee and Gareth Smith. Yeah, it's like the last name thing threw me off. You know what I mean? And now knowing you're married, it's like, well, hello. But
well, they're the
guys,
two most boring last names in the world. So we thought it would make it more interesting putting them together.
Yeah, it's like a gun, right? Smith and Lee, almost. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's true. That's not a good thing right now.
Right, no, it's not. It's not at all. And Jesus. Hopefully, you know, out of the tragedy comes good. I mean, that's what we're all praying for. Guys, thank you so much for being on the show. It's an honor to have you. Beautiful job, Jenny. I look forward to seeing that film. And if you'd like us to push it out with this, that we'd be happy to do that. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Guys, great job. Thank you. All the best. It was great getting to know you guys in this power session. Thank you.
Me too. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye-bye. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in this week. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe and leave us a like and or a comment. It makes a big difference. Play It Forward is brought to you by Digipops, where we're building a community to put film and filmmaker discovery in your hands. Here, filmmakers and fans, the creative class, recognizes each other fairly and transparently through a community-curated film festival each quarter. It's coming soon. Thank you.